Hello and welcome to It's All a Little Weird, the podcast where we discuss cryptozoology, ghosts, sightings, all sorts of other things that are weird and wacky, UFOs and so much more. If you find yourself enjoying this video, please do me a favour and consider hitting that subscribe button. And also, press the like button, it does help with the algorithm. It has been a hot minute since we recorded the last episode of the podcast, but we are back now and hopefully back on a run. So hitting that like button would really help get us back into the algorithm. Without any further ado, today's episode has been chosen by you guys, the viewers. I put a poll up on the community tab just so you lot could choose what this episode was going to be. And this episode is revolving around you, me, and every normal folk. And why would we go out there and join a cult? Now, before we get started, I do want to say that I am not a psychologist. I am not anything other than a stupid mere man. But I have done a little bit of research into why the average Joe would go out there and join a cult. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down, in this episode, we're going to break down a few of the most famous cults and what makes their leaders so charismatic. Now, this all started with the Marshall Applewhite and Heaven's Gate cult. It really got into my mind. It was a real sort of mind worm. It sat there, and I was listening to the talkings of Marshall Applewhite and wondering why your average Joe would go out there and join. And this is what I found. Now, obviously, we can't go into the world of cults without describing the word cult itself. Now, through all the research, cult is derogatory. It's a derogatory term, and normally associated with religion and religious beliefs. Now, the big thing with this is obviously we automatically associate it with bad things, and it's not a terrible thing to do. Obviously, it's one of those things. We're gonna think about a cult, and it's going to be sat there at the back of your mind. We think about Catholicism, and we think about all sorts of other religions across the world, and they are all cult-like. Difference is we're following what some people say is an imaginary leader. Now, the word cult has been around for years and years and years, and it's obviously, like I said, it's been used in a derogatory term. But what turns this mere mortal, this normal person, into the cult-like status person that we know and we've seen before? They're the questions that have arose in my mind during doing the research in this. I don't know whether it's just me, but I can sit there and I can listen to someone very easily and then make my own mind up. Do you have to be at a weak spot to be able to fall into these traps or anything else? Now, cults are normally derogatory, but if you ask a person who's inside a cult, it's a family, it's a social unit, it's a grouping of like-minded people. But how does that brain wave change? How does that thought process change? And to a point where you can't realize what you're actually doing. Now, this episode is going to be very thought-driven. I want you guys to put your thoughts in the comments down below, because for the life of me, I can't manage to get my head around the majority of this. Now, when I've looked into some of the cults, whether it be Charles Manson or Marshall Applewhite or anyone like that, the people that are joining them are normal people. They are everyday Joes and Jonettes who are like you and me, who have fallen by the wayside and actually fell into this. So this is going to be very thought-driven. I'd like you to, like I said, pop your thoughts down in the comments below, because it's just one of those that absolutely baffles my mind. Now, obviously, going into the world of cults, there's not just Heaven's Gate. There's been a lot of cults through history, and the thing is, let's just dive into a couple of them, because it's sort of different cults have done different things, and through different beliefs. That's the thing. I think it's all commonplace for someone with deep-lying or deep-seated beliefs that actually end up following these people. And the thing is, while I go into my notes, we've got the Manson family. So obviously what we're going to do now is we're going to break down a few of the most famous cults and what they did and who they are. So the Manson family, obviously that's one of the biggest. That's one of the most well-known cults out there. And the Manson family famously murdered 7 people over the course of 2 nights to start a war. In the late 60s, Charles Manson brought together a group of displaced young people and called them his family. They settled at Spahn Ranch, a sprawling former movie studio near Los Angeles, where drugs were free-flowing, mandatory orgies were enforced, and Manson pushed his ideas on an imminent race war. The cult leader told his followers he wanted them to go on a killing spree. On August the 8th, 1969, a few members of the cult headed to a Beverly Hills home and murdered 5 people, including actress Sharon Tate. They wrote the words "pig" in Tate's blood on the door. The violence continued the next night when Rosemary and Leno LaBianca were murdered in their Los Felts home by Manson's followers on orders. Rosemary was stabbed 14 times. Manson was convicted of first-degree murder in 1971. He served out his prison sentence until he died on November the 19th, 2017, at the age of 83. Now, looking back through all of this, a lot of his followers and a lot of people who have met Charles in time go by have said he's a handsome young man, very charming, very charismatic, very enigmatic, a beautiful enigma of a person. Now, my question to you about Charles Manson is, if someone walked up that displayed all of those traits, would you follow them blindly and go and stab someone 14 times? Because I know I wouldn't. Now, a lot of drugs, a lot of endorphins and dopamine flowing through the brain can cause a change in the way that someone thinks. But obviously, if you've seen that guy, if you've seen that man sat in front of you, obviously if you've seen pictures of him, I might put a picture on screen if I remember now. Could you listen to that guy while he's talking to you about a race war and think, do you know what? Let's go on a killing spree. Now, to me, there's a lot more twisted thoughts that go into this, because obviously the idea is that someone can't be that broken just by one person telling them to go and do it. Someone has to have some already deep-lying, deep-seated craziness is the term that I'll use, to be able to go out there and do passion crimes. Writing things in someone's blood is crazy. Stabbing someone 14 times is crazy. But what is it? What is it about this charismatic man that was able to turn people? Now, my thoughts are, like I said, it's the drugs and the endorphins, dopamine. It can all be thought process changing. It can all put someone in a persuasive state. But let's move on. Now, the next one that we're going to talk about is quite a biggie. I didn't even realise that this one was about until I actually started doing research for this video. This one is all about, and I am going to murder the name of this, so I do apologise to anyone if they know. And if they could, by any chance or any sort of kindness, put it in how I'm supposed to pronounce it in the comments, and that would be great. Members of Aum Shinrikyo left 5 bags filled with toxic nerve agent on 3 Tokyo trains during rush hour. Now, the cult Aum Shinrikyo was founded in the 80s by Shoko Asahara. He claimed to be Christ. Now, this one started off a little bit different. Obviously, normally we've got the charismatic, enigmatic, beautiful, good-looking young leader. Marshall Applewhite was even described as being a very intelligent man. But this guy believed he was Christ. And at one point, garnered tens of thousands of followers across the world. His teachings started out spiritual and then became increasingly violent. Cult members even paid money to drink Asahara's blood. On March the 20th, 1995, so in recent history, members of Aum Shinrikyo left 5 bags filled with toxic nerve agent on 3 Tokyo train lines during rush hour. Passengers began choking and throwing up. 13 people died because of the attack, and 5,800 people were injured. As months went by, the cult tried and failed to attack another subways with a deadly cyanide. Asahara was sentenced to death along with 12 other members of I Am Shikari. 7 members were executed in July of 2018, including Asahara himself. The other 6 are still on death row in Japan. Now, this one, obviously, like I said, he thought he was Christ. And tens of thousands of people believed him. Tens of thousands of people. Now, these people ranged from Japan itself over to Russia and other areas. It was worldwide. It was worldwide. Now, I know in the grand scheme of things, statistically speaking, there's going to be some crazies throughout the world. But tens of thousands of people believed in the words of this man. He was selling, I can't get over this bit, he was selling his blood for people to drink. The man was a modern day Messiah in his own eyes. He believed he was Christ. Can you see that I just don't understand that bit? I see myself as a bit of a rational brain. I have got a rational mind. And if someone sat there in front of me in any way, shape or form, at my lowest low, at my highest high, and said, do you know what? I'm Christ. I don't know whether it's the atheist in me or not, but I would not believe him in any way, shape or form. Now, like I said, normally it's the charismatic enigma of a man or woman that garners these people to follow them. But these are the teachings of a crazy person. And I suppose we can't talk about charismatic leaders without talking about Jim Jones, founder of the People's Temple, and instructed all of his followers to drink cyanide-laced Flavor Aid. More than 900 people died. In 1955, Jim Jones founded the People's Temple in Indianapolis. He grew concerned that a nuclear attack would fall on the area. Now, obviously, this is one of those where it's a very charismatic person. I've seen a lot of his teachings and a lot of his words. And he came about at the beginning as a very passionate, very controlled man. These are one of those that I could kind of go, right, I can listen to him. I'm not going to believe what he says, but I'm going to listen to him. And then as he became more powerful, and he became more powerful in his own head, he started to lose it. So he moved his congregation to Eureka, California, which he thought would be safer. Paranoia struck again in 1977, this time born out of media attention, and Jones moved the People's Temple to a settlement in Guyana dubbed Jonestown. US Congressman Leo Ryan decided to visit the People's Temple new location in Guyana in 1978 in order to investigate reports of abuse of members. He was shot and killed by 4 members of the People's Temple. Jones then instructed all of his followers to drink Flavor Aid laced with cyanide. Over 900 bodies were discovered at the settlement, including Jones himself, who had a bullet wound to his head. In an unsigned suicide note, one of the members of the cult wrote, "If nobody understands, it matters not. I am ready to die now." Darkness settles over Jonestown on its last day on Earth. Now, obviously, I'm not going to delve into the story of Jim Jones, because Jim Jones is a story all in himself. But again, a very charismatic person, and almost light-hearted at the beginning, until moments of madness, or moments of clarity, depending on which way you want to see it, made 900 people follow him to his death. This is Marshall Applewhite on a grand scale, someone who had very firm beliefs. And the People's Temple were just, I'm sorry if I cause offence, I have to say it, full of crazy people. Because if you can follow someone to the point of this, then what else can happen? Now, what we're going to do after talking about these small cults that I found, is we're going to delve into what makes you or I join these weird people. Now, I'm not going to lie, this bit is going to be a little bit rambly, so let's get our heads around it, let's get ourselves in that state of mind. So, cult leaders, let's start at the top and work our way down. So, cult leaders bring something to someone at a time that they need it. That is my view on this. Whether that person be at the lowest of the low or having a time of life where it's essentially a crisis, that's where it all starts. Because these people, these heads of these religions, these cults, they're not enigmatic, they're not charismatic, they're con artists. And basically what they're doing is giving you something that you expect that you need. They are selling you snake oil at a time that you think that you need it. Now, if you put yourself in that frame of mind, you are at a low point in life. And if you are, I'm sorry, and I'm not meaning to bring anything up, but if you're at that lowest point, then this person who comes along and says, listen, we have a family. We have a space where you can come and be yourself. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are, colour, creed, or anything else. Come sit with us, talk, and be happy. Now, to me, it's a perfect escape. For someone who sees themselves at rock bottom, it's a perfect escape. Now, that's the easy bit, because do you know what? We'd all like a perfect escape. Would that make you turn to murder? It wouldn't me. But that's the first part. Offering sanctuary, offering safety, offering a kind-minded person, or a person with the same sort of thoughts that you've got. They're selling you something. They're selling you snake oil. They're selling you the ideology that you could be safe and warm and in a family unit that you may never had before. Now, while looking through this, I obviously looked into things like the Ku Klux Klan and stuff like that, and they preyed. They preyed on their members. A lot of their members got pulled in because they were at a low point. They were on drugs, or they were abandoned, or they had no family or anything like that. And these are the people that these cult leaders, these brilliant-minded ideologists will pull in. Now, when you're at breaking point, that idea, that welcoming thought, that warmness can pull you in. It's once they've got you in that the big things happen. So people like Charles Manson, people like Jim Jones, obviously start out as a kind-hearted person who sits there, and you've got drugs, and you've got sex, and you've got everything that sells. Obviously, advertisers use sex. Now, once you're feeling comfortable in your little family group, all it takes is the smallest little inquiry on how a person will react to that idea. Now, if you've got a group of like-minded people and you all sit there and you start talking about, do you know what, there could be a war coming. I could see a war coming. Don't get me wrong, you're listening to a conspiracy theory channel. You're listening to a UFO channel. But does that mean that I'm going to sit here and say, do you know what, there could be an alien war coming? No, it doesn't. I have got a skeptical mind. I have got a believer's mind. But that doesn't mean that you force your opinion and force your ideology onto someone else. Because right at that moment in time may be the time when you're able to turn around to them and say, do you know what, there's a war coming. We need to man up. We need to defend. And that person will then turn around and go, yes. Call it right time, right moment. Call it whatever you like. But what makes that sane person turn? That's what I really want to get down to. Because as a sane person, I try and sit myself in these situations where I'm listening to your Jim Jones, your Marshall Applewhites, and listening to their talks. And I will sit there and I will laugh and I will sort of play it off to some broken human being. But as we've seen with a lot of cults, tens of thousands of people will actually sit there and think, you know what, maybe they've got a point. For every sane person like you or I, there is that one that's a little bit extremist, a little bit out there. And all it takes is for someone to push them over the edge. And that's what it all boils down to. Does the sane person, I think it's down to ratios and numbers, if I'm going to be honest. Because if you throw enough peripheral excrement at the wall, something is going to stick. And that's obviously how it works. These people are not afraid of rejection, which is why they will approach every and anyone. And if you throw enough excrement at the wall, something will stick. That one person, that follower, will follow. And once you manage to get a small following, people start to take you a little bit more seriously. When it escalates to the cult side is obviously the following of that belief. Now, all this is pulling that one or two people in with the idea of family, group, social group, warm, caring, kind people, and then turning them to your thought process. Now, that is not an easy feat. But if you've already got wounded people, if you've already got people who are searching for that sort of, that life, that idea of family, and that's what it probably always boils down to. I was after something, and something was missing in my life. These people are ready to die because they are ready to die. They don't need a reason to do it. That's my common thought process behind a lot of it. Unfortunately, the sad loss of life are from people that could have been given real help and the real guidance from someone who cares or someone who knows what they're going through. It just so happens that they fell into the lap of someone like Jim Jones or Marshall Applewhite, and they were given this reason to die. Now, the same person that I am, I can't honestly put myself in that position. I think it's obviously it's something that I'd have to be in that position to be able to understand that position. But at the end of the day, people follow, and that's how we work. Now, whether we want to follow ideas or we want to follow thought processes or anything along those lines, we follow, and that's kind of where these cults get their power. Because once that minute little small following gathers a little bit of momentum, it's easy for those crazy people, if I'm going to say it, those crazy people to follow suit. And for every normal person that joins these cults, there will be an extremist. The 14 stabs, the 900 people. Out of the 900 people shot a congressman at the People's Temple. So out of them, the numbers game, there will be a few extremists. And that's what it all boils down to. The normal person like you or I may join that cult because we're after something that life is not giving us. Whether that be a family, a social group, a friend, an ear to listen to, or even a way out. But you will always have the extremist. Now, one of the things that I do want to say with this video is I am going to be posting some links in the description to the Samaritans and things like that. Because if you are, or you know people who are suffering from any kind of issues, then please follow up on it. Help them. I'm not saying that they're going to go out there and join a cult, but they may just need that ear. I firmly believe that the normal person, and normal is not the normal person would not go out there and do the things that we see happening in these cults. All it takes for that normal person to twist is one decent speaker who has some beliefs that it's easier to follow than it is to ignore. And you could sit there and you could find yourself sat round a fire with a group of like-minded people discussing war on the world. Anyway, that is the end of my cult video. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. I've been Adam. This has been It's All a Little Weird, and thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.